Okay, welcome. We're going to talk about graphing exponential functions. You're going to probably want your calculators for this. Although there are quite a few we can do without our calculator, the way I go about this is I start with a t-chart. So for number 1 here, and I pretty much always choose at minimum these values for x. I'm going to have x be 0 and x be 1 and 2 and -1 and -2. And sometimes I add a few more values on, as you will see soon. Excuse me. So when x is 0, I get 2 to the 0th, and anything to the 0th, of course, is 1. So I have the point 0, 1 right down here. And when x is 1, I get 2 to the first again. 2 to the first is 2, so I have a point 1, 2. And when x is 2, I get 2 to the second. 2 to the second is 4, so I get the point 2, 4. Then, when x is -1, I get 2 to the negative first, and you could do that on calculator, but 2 to the negative first is just 1 on 2 to the first, or 1/2. So at -1, I'm up a half over here. And when x is -2, I get 2 to the negative second, which is 1 on 2 to the second. I'm going to use this space over here. 1 on 2 to the second, and I get 1/4. And let's think about that for a little bit. 1/4, closer to 0. 2 to the third is going to get closer to 0. It's going to be 1 on 8. Or excuse me, 2 to the negative third is going to be 1 on 8, and 2 to the negative fourth is going to be 1 on 16th, but I'm never going to get to 0. I'm going to get really, really close. So I draw this right along the axis, and then it starts curving through. But where do I go from there? Sometimes those 5 points are enough, but I suspect if this trend continues, I can fit another point on beyond x is 2. So I'm going to put in 3. When x is 3, I get 2 to the third. 2 times 2 times 2, 8. So when x is 3, I'm up to 8. It's getting steeper, but I think maybe I can get another one on there. 2 to the fourth. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. You can check it, calculator. 16. 4 to the 16th. If I was going to go one more point, 2 to the 5th is 32, and I would be way up there. And this is something that I want you to pay special attention to. I'm going to be exiting the graph before I get to 5. I'm going to exit the graph between 4 and between 5, and you can just kind of think of that as your soccer goal. I want my graph to exit right through there, so I'm going to keep bringing this guy up, try to keep it reasonably straight through there, and I'm going to exit through that soccer goal. So I got a little bit of a wiggle in here, but pretty good shape for this. Okay, so very similarly, y equals 3 to the x. I'm going to choose an XY chart, and I pretty much always start with 0, 1, 2, -1, -2, and see where that gets me. Okay. When x is 0, I get 3 to the 0th, 3 to the 0th, 1. 0, 1. When x is 1, I get 3 to the first, 3. So I get the point 1, 3. When x is 2, I shouldn't put that there as a negative. When x is 2, I get 3 to the second. 3 times 3, 9. By the time I'm at 2, I'm all the way up to 9. When x is -1, I get 3 to the negative first, which is 1 on 3. So by the time I'm at -1, I'm just barely above 0, just a third. When x is -2 here, I get 3 to the negative second, which is elevator ride, 1 on 3 to the positive second, or 1/9. I'm virtually 0. So I hug right along the x-axis here and start curving up. And now I just have to ask, is there room for another point on there? I'm not really satisfied with the look of that. Let's do that again. Raced a little bit more than I wanted to. Get rid of you. Try to get rid of you. Will I be starting this over? Nope, I'm going to continue on. So back to, I had a 0.29. Let's try this again. Right along the axis and up through that point. So let's see what happens if I move over to x is 3. By the time I get to x is 3, 3 to the third is 3 times 3 times 3, 27. That is exit. I'm exiting somewhere up here before I get to 3. So here's my soccer goal right in here. So I'm just going to take this graph right up and keep it somewhere in the goal there. Might have gotten a tiny bit too far to the right. Okay, so there's our process for exponential graphs. Now we just have some varieties of that. For instance, 1/3. Some of these numbers are going to look familiar, but let's go ahead just as we start any of these. X is 0, x is 1, x is 2, x is -1, x is -2. Almost always use those, sometimes add a couple more. So when x is 0, I don't care if it's a fraction, anything to the 0th is 1. When x is 1, I don't care if it's a fraction, anything to the first is itself. 1/3. So now at 1, I'm only up a third. When x is 2, I get 1/3 to the second. That is 1/9. I'm practically 0 already. I'm getting pulled right into that axis. I could even go ahead and draw this part right. Ooh, a little lower. Draw this part right here. That's why I'm having some problem. My setting is a little bit odd. Okay, so when 1/3 is taken to the negative first, that's almost good news. That a negative exponent outside a fraction just flips the fraction over. That's 3 to the first, 3. -1 gets me up to 3. -2, 1/3 to the negative second becomes +3 to the second. That is 9. So at -2, I'm up at 9. And if I was to go to -3, 1/3 to the negative third is 1 on 3 to the third, or is 3 to the third, excuse me, and that is 27. You can do it in your calculator. You can take 1/3 as a fraction and raise that to the negative third. And we get 27. So I see once again I'm exiting prior to getting over, in this case, to -3. So here is my soccer goal. Ball has to run through there. Let's see how we do. Going up through here. Now pretty darn straight up. Exit through there. And that's a good shape to that. Okay, let's jump over to this one. You may want to give that one a try. The notes are available online, probably where you found the link to this video. If not, if you're trying it, go ahead and pause, try it, see how it works out. If not, here we go. X, Y, x is 0, x is 1, x is 2, x is -1, x is -2. 0, or 1/2 to the 0th is 1. Pretty familiar. 1/2 to the first stays 1/2. So by the time I'm over at 1, I'm only up a half. 1/2 to the second is 1/2 times 1/2. Calculator if you have to, but 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4. Closer to 0. Enough to give me a pretty good feel for what's going on here. We hug right along 0. We don't really cross it, but hug right along it. When I put -1 in, 1/2 to the negative first, that flips the fraction. +2 to the positive first, 2. At -1, I'm up 2. When I put in -2, I get 1/2 to the negative second. That becomes plain old 2 to the second, 4. So at -2, I'm up 4. Looks like I've got room to move left. So erase a little bit of this. Try that, come on, you can do it. Okay, so now when I put in -3, if I go -3, I get plain old 2 to the positive third, 8. At -3, I'm up 8. I might have room to go again. -4, I get plain old 2 to the positive 4. And that is 16. And now I believe my next point exits. So here is my soccer goal. Aiming between there. I don't just try to throw this curve down as quick as I can. It's a little tough on the smart board because I could probably reorient this board a little bit, but I end up with that. Okay, so one thing you're noticing is, wow, all of these graphs look like they go through 0, 1 so far. Let's take a look. Okay, here you probably really could benefit from a calculator unless you're comfortable working with fractions. But of course, for this course, calculator is allowed. X still going to choose 0, 1, 2, -1, -2. And you may just want to enter this guy in your calculator, particularly if you have a TI-30 or a graphing calculator. You may just want to enter this exactly as it appears, and we're going to get like 1 on 2 as a fraction times 1 on 4 as a fraction in your fractional calculator raised to the, in this case, 0. So if you do that, 1/4 to the 0th is 1, and 1 times 1/2, we get 1/2. The beauty of the TI-30 is if you're using that, you can now just cursor back up to this equation and just replace the 0 with a 1, and then a 2, and then a -1, and then a -2. So when x is 1, I get 1/4 to the first, that's 1/4, times 1/2, that's 1/8. When x is 2, I just replace this with a 2. 1/4 to the second is 1/16 times 1/2, 1 on 32. Again, you can get that from your calculator, but we are at 0 virtually. So 0 1/2. 1, I'm at 1/8. 2, 1/32. I'm getting pulled into 0. And we look like that. How about -1? When I put -1 in for 0 here, 1/4 flips becomes 4 to the first, 4 times 1/2, I jump up to 2. -1, I'm up to 2 already. When I put in -2, I end up with, I'll write it down here, 1/2 times -2 turns that into plain old 4 to the positive second. That's 16 times half. Half of 16 is 8. -2, I jump all the way up to 8. Going pretty steep. I'm not sure I don't exit, but I guess I'll try. -3. When I put in -3, I get 1/2 times plain old 4 to the third. Common mistake 12, but 4 to the third is 64 times 1/2, 32. I'm off the sheet, making this my goal. Somewhere between -2 and -3 is my goal. So this starts growing pretty fast through here and then continues over but keeps going up. Ooh, that's pretty good. Through my goal. Okay, so what did we just learn? We don't always go through 0, 1. All right, let's take a look at number 6. Again, good time for you to pause, try one on your own, but if you're sticking with me, that's fine. Or if you paused, welcome back. Not going to change how I start. 0, 1, 2, -1, -2. 3 to the 0th is 1. Then 1 times 2 is 2. So once again, I do not have a point at 0, 1. When I put in 1, I get 3 to the first. 3 times 2, 6. 1 gets me all the way up to 6. Looks like I'm going to exit pretty quickly here. When I put in 2 for x, I get 3 to the second, 9 times 2, 18, and that just barely fits on. I am very confident that I'm going to exit between here and here pretty darn close to 2. I'm going to exit pretty close to that guy. Put in -1. 3 to the negative first. That's 2 times 3 to the negative first is 1/3. That is 2/3. Pretty close to 1, but a little bit under 1. Put in -2, and I get 2 times 1/3 to the second. You can check that on your calculators. That's 2/9 or 0.22 repeating. 2/9, pretty small, closer to 0. I hug right along the axis. Curve up through. Keep coming up. Hopefully I'm on target to hit that point. Close. And through. Nice to have arrowheads. This graph does continue forever. Okay, and then you see we got something different. The graphs are set up for this that might have something to do with this negative. Let's give these a shot. X, Y, 0, 1, 2, -1, -2. They all start out that way. I may add a point. When I put in 0 for X, I get 2 to the 0th 1. 1 times -3. 0, -3. Oh, no wonder they set the graph upside down. When I put in 1, I get 2 to the first 2 times -3, -6. 1 gets me down to -6. When I put in 2, 2 to the second 4 times -3, -12. 2 gets me down to -12, and I suspect I'm off the graph. Maybe I'll try 3 down here. When I put in 3, 3 times 2 to the third is 3 times 8 is 24, but it's -3 times, so -24. So I am off the graph by the time I'm over at 3, making my goal between here, exit goal. When I put in -1, I get -3 times 2 to the -1st is just 1/2. Check it on your calculator. That's -1.5 or -3/2. -1.5. So at -1, I'm down 1.5 right there. When I put in -2, I get -3 times 1/2 to the second. Check it in your calculator, but that is -3/4. So by time I'm left 2, I'm down 3/4, and I see it. That curve is flattening out once again to the axis. So I'm down here and keep my exit goal in mind. Goal. Okay, go ahead and give 8 a try. Put this on pause. All right, let's take a look at number 8. X, Y, nothing different here. 0, 1, 2, -1, -2. Put in 0. 2 to the 0th 1 times -5. Whoop, that's -6. Try that again. Okay. Put in 1. 2 to the first 2 times -5, -10. By the time I'm at 1, I'm down at -10, running out of room fast here. Let's see, do we have room? Put in 2. I get 2 to the second 4 times -5, -20. 2 is -20. That is my exit goal exactly right there. Okay, I need some guidance moving to the left, so put in -1. I get -5 times 2 to the -1st 1/2. You can check that. That is -2.5. -2.5 right here. Put in -2, and I get -5 times 1/2 to the second. You can check that out, but that is -5/4 or -1.25 if you like. Just a little bit below -1. Right in there. But I know what happens on these. It gets pulled into the axis. We got this, got to get my shadow out of the way here. And here's my exit goal right on that point. That line got a little bit wobbly, not too bad. Okay, so that is graphing of exponential functions. It's pretty mechanical. There are certainly times where we may want a calculator with it, but pretty straightforward. Hopefully that helps, and stay tuned.